So here on screen, you can see a couple of recent client results. We've been running ads for these clients and doing pretty well. And so I thought, why not make a YouTube video on everything or some of the things that we've learned about running these meta ads at scale, getting 3 to 4x return on ad spend, high spend, everything to do with financial modeling, messaging, creative, launching, and scaling. Because what I've seen from working with a lot of done for you clients and consulting on a lot of other people's ads is that a lot of people are structuring campaigns wrong. They're writing copy, especially that sounds like everyone else's, which is why CPAs are climbing every single month, and a lot of people can't work out why. And like I said, in the last few weeks, we've been doing some pretty cool numbers. And so by the end of this video, I'm going to show you all of this stuff that I made for you. You should be able to financially model a funnel before you spend any money, write messaging and write good ads that actually register with your ICP, and build campaigns and structures in the right way so that you can scale without having to waste a ton of money to figure it out yourself. So the first thing that you ever need to do before you spend $1 of money on Meta is figure out the numbers, which is why you need to financially model your numbers out backwards before launching a campaign so that you can actually figure out what numbers need to be improved or what is out of whack when you do launch and things inevitably somewhat may go out of whack. And it will also enable you to know what the break-even case is, the good case is, and the best case scenario is for when you're launching for the first time. So I'm going to move over to our predictor over here. And what you can see here is a cold traffic webinar predictor. And it is my belief that webinars are 1,000,000% the best funnel to run if you're looking to launch on cold traffic in a B2C info environment. I'm going to make an updated best practices for webinars video very soon, but there is one on my channel that's about 40 minutes long, which runs through everything you need to know about webinars. But this video is on ads. So let's say I'm running ads and my CPMs are $70, my click-through rate is $2, and my sign-up rate on my webinar landing page is $25. Then I can expect a cost per lead of $14. And let's say I want to spend $7,000 on ads. I go for 500 registrants. These are pretty average numbers that we see across our clients. 25% peak show rate, 80% webinar retention rate, 30% booking rate, cool show rate, 70%, cool close rate, 30%, and average order value, let's say, is $3,000. In this case, we have spent $7,000 and we've made $18,000, but with a few tweaks in these numbers. For example, our AOV going up to $4,000, we're at a 3.4x return on ad spend. If our close rate goes up to 40%, we're at a 4.57 return on ad spend. However, if our show rate is really bad and we don't get enough people on the webinar, then obviously it drops down to a 3.4. All of these numbers are part of the funnel. If your CPMs are double and your cost per lead doubles, you're instantly a lot less profitable. So you need to know all of these numbers. You need to know what actually impacts these numbers, which I'm going to show you here in just a second, in terms of how to actually improve each number. So when you do launch your ads and one number is out of whack, you know exactly what you need to do to be able to fix that. Because if you go in blind with no data, you aren't even tracking this data, then you're completely cooked. And last video I made on this channel is on tracking. So do be sure to watch that if you are struggling to track data. But just to run you through some of these numbers and what to do if they're out of whack. If your CPMs are too high, you need more ad diversity, you need better ads and more algorithm-friendly ads. If your CTR, your click-through rate is too low, you just need better ads and better hooks. Typically, if your opt-in rate is low, either your offer isn't very good or your headline isn't very good or your messaging congruency between the ad and the landing page isn't good and your ads are going after the wrong people who don't align with the headline or whatever you're promising to teach them on the webinar. If your webinar show rate is low, you need to look at your emails, you need to look at your SMS, you need to see if you're using a WhatsApp group, and Zoom webinars specifically. I've actually seen a good bump in show rates for us over Webinar Jam in certain markets. Webinar retention, your webinar itself just needs to be better. If people aren't staying on the webinar, or the actual presenter needs to be better at presenting the webinar. And if your booking rate isn't good, then especially the pitch, but generally the entire webinar can be improved. Or by pitch, I also mean the offer. The offer may need to be improved. If your call show rate is low, you need the back-end selling systems in place. So your pre-call sequences, your hammer them campaign, your setters and your closers following best practices in terms of making sure they're getting in touch with leads and making sure that all of that is in place. And I made a full YouTube video on how we're making $10,000 a day with an offer with the right back-end selling systems in place on this channel. Now, cool close rate, if it's below 30%, then you need to get better closers, but be careful because if your close rate is too high, it may mean your price is too low and you can increase price. So 30% is a good benchmark for close rate if your sales team is good. Now, a few things to remember here when you're financially modeling is a lot of people like to look in the results column on Meta. They look at their cost per lead if it's a webinar funnel, or their cost per call if it's a call funnel, and that's the only thing they focus on. And we did this actually for a client for a while. We saw ads that were just getting a very, very good cost per lead, but they weren't attracting the right type of people, and our return on ad spend was very low. And so although a cost per lead is a good metric to look at, it is not what defines a funnel and isn't what you should be religiously looking at. Metrics like average order value, cost per booked call, and I mean the main one here is return on ad spend. Cost per booked call can be very, very misleading as well, are the angles you should be focusing on. And how you should analyze these bottlenecks is actually downstream from this last one of like, how much money are we getting per close, or what is our return on ad spend? Because your cost per call might be high, but if your AOV and your offer is extremely high ticket, then that might not be a problem. And if your close rate is low, it may be due to bad closes, but it also just may be due to very bad marketing on the front end where leads aren't framed correctly and there is a quality issue with the amount of money that they have, etc., etc. So make sure before you launch ads that you do this financial model, that you go through it, that you have organic systems normally in place if you've never run ads before, because if not, you are literally heading in blind. Now, you could have all of this in place, but to be honest, the second pillar of what we're going to be talking about here is messaging. And this is the most important thing that you can do when you're running ads. You could theoretically just run some amazing ads, like amazing ads. You haven't done a financial model, you don't even look at the numbers, and you will still get a great return on ad spend. You will still make a ton of money if you can get this right. So messaging is essentially what is seen in the ad, what is heard in the ad, what is read in the ad, and what is perceived by everything else. Basically what is perceived by these three things here. And with the new Andromeda update on Meta, your targeting, when you run broad ads, which is what I'd recommend, is done by the creative. So done by what is seen, heard, read, and perceived in the ad. So like I say here, our messaging determines the type of person that is going to come through our ad. And so before we write any ads, we need to be extremely clear on who we are talking to be able to attract the right person through our messaging. And I'm going to go into this in a second. The first thing you need to understand is Schwartz's pyramid of levels of awareness. Now, this is something a lot of people have seen in the marketing space, but it is extremely important to know who you're speaking to when you're writing ads. You need to know whether they are completely unaware. And how I would describe this is, let's say I was selling a B2C coaching business offer on how to start ecom. Someone who is completely unaware might be like a taxi driver. Let's say I go in an Uber and the person at Uber asks me what I do, and I say, oh, I do e-commerce. And they're like, oh, you e-commerce, okay, tell me more. Yeah, so I run Shopify stores, we build brands, and we run meta ads, and I make about 20% margin on all the revenue. And yeah, been doing it for a few years. That person is completely unaware, and I'm telling them about this. And then, you know, this person, the taxi, might be like, oh, I actually I'm interested. I really want to be able to do that and leave this job driving a taxi. You know, how can I actually learn this? Now, in that journey, you've kind of taken them from completely unaware of their kind of situation to be like, oh, this person who's 19 is doing ecom. He's making more money than me, or he seems to be from what he's told me. I've got a problem here. So you're taking them from like unaware to problem aware, and then going from problem aware to solution aware is like, oh, I need some sort of help to be able to learn how to do this. And then to go to product aware would be like, oh, this person I'm sitting in the taxi with has a coaching program. I'm aware of the coaching program. And the most aware is basically when they're ready to buy. And what you've got to understand in this is, like, imagine the taxi driver as a prospect on meta ads. You can target someone at different stages of this awareness through your messaging. You could target someone who has no idea about a business model, who is only aware that they have a problem that they want to solve, someone who is aware about the solution, but not about your solution, your product, and then someone who is already aware about your product. And the reason I've got a picture of a doctor here on the right is because you need to have surgical precision with your messaging, and you need to be speaking directly to your ICP and know exactly where your ICP is on this pyramid with your ads, like a doctor would. A doctor would be very specific with their prescription, and you need to be the same. Another thing you need to understand is, this is kind of like an inversion of the pyramid of awareness, is the segments of the market in terms of this being the total addressable market. There are certain people who are so unaware that they were just never going to buy from you. Like, personally, me, I don't think I would ever buy an ecom coaching offer just because I'm in a different market, right? I'm running a marketing agency. Mass market is like 9-to-5ers and just the average person you would see on the street. A needs convinced demographic is potentially, you know, people who, with enough convincing, seeing enough of your content, spending enough time with you watching YouTube videos, could be convinced that your model or your offer is right for them. But the people that we want to target when we launch advertising campaigns, and this is really important to understand in this context, are the in-market people. So for an ecom coaching offer, what that would look like is running ads with messaging that are targeted towards people who are either already sold on the idea of doing e-commerce, already interested in e-commerce in some way. Maybe they've already bought an e-commerce program. Maybe they've tried a store in the past. And these people, they don't need to be convinced that e-com can get them to where they want to go, because they've already proved that through their actions or through their beliefs that we can speak to in the ads. So these are what is known as an in-market demographic. And I got this from Jeremy Haynes, of course. In a market, typically 3% of the market will be in market for a product. So this is great when launching ads to speak to this demographic, but at scale, you will fatigue in this kind of in-market demographic, depending on the niche that you're in. And you will eventually need to go broader and broader, to the point where someone like Shelby Sapp, for example, is going super mass market. Any girl in the USA could probably buy her offer, and she's over here. She's not only selling to people who are already like, oh, I want to get into remote sales. Yes, those people could buy her offer theoretically, but she's trying to get people down this stages of awareness through her content, or up the stages of awareness, or bring people from mass market down to needs convinced, down to in market. You can kind of see it the same way. through her content and then through her ads as well. So like I said, going to an in-market demographic when first transitioning to paid traffic with an offer is easier because these people already have a pain point or a problem that they want to solve, and you have to do way less convincing in your marketing. If you start off your ad with, are you looking for the best way to make money online in 2026? Yes, that is going to appeal to way more people. Your costs will probably be lower, but the type of person you're going to attract, and also kind of, you're going to need to do a lot more convincing to sell them on like e-commerce as a business model, because they may not even like know how e-commerce works or what it is. Like imagine me selling my offer, which is, helping growth operators get started with growth operating or scale their growth operating agencies. If I tried to sell my offer to someone who had never started online business before, it would be way harder to sell it to that person than to sell it to someone who's just struggling to sign growth operating clients, but knows it's the vehicle that they want to do. You know what I mean? So if I say this in an ad compared to if I say the reason why you haven't been able to scale with e-com is because you aren't using the untapped market system that we've developed, that is immediately like the only people clicking on that ad are people who are somewhat in market for e-commerce. And of course, there's a lot more layers that come into ads, hooks, different formats and stuff that we'll get into. But this is really, really important to understand when you're launching ad campaigns. It's one of the number one things I see people get very, very wrong. It's also extremely, extremely important to be congruent, which we're going to get into. But remember, I've already said this, at scale, you will see fatigue and difficulty scaling, not targeting, scaling, in a solely highly aware in-market demographic, which is why, at scale, you need to expand to broader messaging to tap into a new market, new demographic that your offer can serve. And also remember that new offers, new funnels, new conversion events inside of Meta can also help you tap into different audience pockets without needing huge changes in messaging or which awareness level you are targeting. So all of that, very, very important. Now, messaging congruency is also important. So what is said in the ad needs to be reflected throughout the entire funnel. Let's say we run an ad targeting existing UGC creators, talking about how we can help them scale from 2K a month where they're stuck to 10K a month with our coaching program. But our headline on our landing page and our VSL is talking about how UGC is the best way for beginners to make money online. Well, these people already making about $2,000 a month from UGC, they already know that it's a good way to make, they're not beginners. Like they don't need to, they're going to be kind of put off by that. Imagine if you saw an ad which was like, oh shit, this really resonates with me. And then you click on it and it's like, everything else is not really relevant. It is incongruent and it makes a prospect confused, and a confused prospect doesn't buy, and a confused prospect doesn't register for a webinar if that's the funnel you're running, and they don't book a call either. And so the same principle applies not just when it comes to your VSL and the webinar itself, and not just the ads, but also headline, also emails, also the unique mechanism. For example, this is a landing page for one of our clients where we talk about brand direct, and this is something that we play on heavily in the ads in the Amazon market, which is why having extremely detailed knowledge on your ICP, their awareness levels, and all of that is so important, not just for your ads, but also in the entire process. Actually, you've been running a webinar on warm traffic for a while. You may be doing it monthly. As you go to cold traffic, if you're advertising in an in-market kind of niche, your webinar has to reflect that. You don't want to go super broad and just teach some very surface level stuff to a demographic of people who are a bit more advanced or a bit more aware. There is a caveat to that. Like you will attract like a broad range of people through your ads. Sometimes like there'll be just a mix of people. It won't just be the exact same person. And some people might be a bit less aware, but it is something you need to be aware of. And it's something that is like the most important and widely misunderstood thing when people come to me and they're running ads for the first time for their clients, or even a coach comes to me, they're trying to run ads. This is something they just don't understand, and it's so important. Another thing that is extremely, extremely important is obviously your creative and your copy. And arguably, it's just as important as the messaging. Now, we already kind of touched on this, but Andromeda. In 2025, Meta rolled out an AI update called Andromeda. And pre-Andromeda, ad targeting was about picking interests, lookalikes, and behaviors in Ads Manager. But post-Andromeda, your messaging, which we discussed, does the targeting. And so 99% of the campaigns we run for clients right now are just broad with no interests, no lookalikes, and no audience laying. We let the pixel and Meta's algorithm decide who to show the ad to, and we trust in that algorithm for the most part. We'll get into campaign structure in just a second, which is why, and all of this Andromeda stuff is why creative diversification is one of the biggest levers you have on cold campaigns post Andromeda, because Meta now rewards you for more organic feeling content, or they did so before, but even more so post Andromeda. And also they reward you for creative variety. You will get lower CPMs. You will just have better results when you have more creative variations, because you can tap into different pockets of the market, because Meta thinks, okay, this ad will serve this person better based on the data that it's getting. Now, remember, Meta have like 53,000 data points on each user, so they really do know what they're doing. And if you're only running 5 ads, you get 5 small pockets of buyer signal that those ads can go to. But if you have 25 unique ads, and the key word here is unique, do not run an ad and just stitch a different hook on it, because Meta register that as the same ad. You need, the more unique ads, the better. 25 unique ads, for example, is 25 pockets, and a much higher chance of Meta actually finding your buyer and being able to find more people just like that. Now, to write like 25 unique ads is easy, but if you're sat in the same desk with the same t-shirt recording all of those ads, they all look very similar, it isn't good for the algorithm. So you need to diversify your ads. like I said, don't have the same angle with the same format, same talking ad, same shirt, same background, because Meta will read that as one ad in 5 different disguises. You need to diverse your ad in terms of messaging. So, have a different psychological hook or layer in every single ad, whether that be an emotional layer, a social layer, financial, time, risk, status, identity, situational, competitive, different types of hooks. So for example, I could have a competition hook, like, oh, your competition is doing this and you're not, so you're behind, or we could have a emotional based hook. It's like, you're an idiot for not doing this. Like, there are so many different ways you can frame the same idea, and you should still frame this, like, be speaking to the same ICP, have the same type of messaging, but just doing it in different ways with different emotional messaging, we could say. And then the second layer to diversification is format. So your ads should look different in terms of their production. So if your ads are filmed in the same room with the same shirt and the same lighting, it all signals the same to Meta. So you need to diversify both the messaging and the format. And in terms of formats, like, there are so many. You have direct to camera, like I am now speaking to my camera. You have static ads like this, which you can create with ChatGPT in literally minutes, which are heavily underrated, although can kind of bring you bad lead quality if your messaging isn't good. You have B-roll type ads. You have raw style ads filmed on your phone as a selfie. You have whiteboard ads where you use a whiteboard as a prop. You have green screen ads, comment pin ads on Instagram where it looks very native. So the more native your formats look, often Meta like that, because it's like, it's not as taxing to see for like a consumer to see an ad that looks like a normal reel. Like sometimes I'll see a reel and I won't even realize it's an ad. And you'll actually be rewarded with lower CPMs when you do that. Green screen ads, so like native on TikTok and IG where you have an image behind you and just recording on your phone. Podcast style ads, demonstration of product ads, walking ads where you're outside, case study led ads, like client interview ads. We actually using AI UGC hooks, which is really, really interesting on some of our ads. So these are just some formats that you can use, but the more you vary your formats, like once you have a winner, try spinning it up in different formats, because it crushes and it really helps the account scale at spend, like, $150,000 in spend over the last 3 months. Then the final thing to really drill home when it comes to writing ad copy, and I actually think that I keep saying this, but this is probably the most important thing when it comes to running good ads or writing good ads, is actually just being a very good copywriter, because everyone is running ads with AI nowadays in terms of how they write them, right? And AI is extremely good at making nothing statements that don't register with your ICP, and the keyword here is register. Whereas using the principle of dimensionalization, this actually makes your copy land inside of your prospect's brain, especially with AI ads. Like, hundreds of people are using AI to write ads, and so you don't want your ads to read and feel like all of these other ads that are just not profitable. So instead of using vague benefits and using words like success and issue and problem and all of these vague generic words that ChatGPT will give you that don't really mean anything, you need to really paint the picture and write good copy that paints a specific picture or outcome that will actually drive your prospect to take action, because they've never seen you before. This is a cold ad, and for them to really feel like you can solve their problem, you need to speak to their problems or speak to their desires, or really put things or frame things or word things in a way that resonates with them and actually registers in their head, which no one is doing. For example, you'll save 10 hours a week versus you won't have to spend Sundays night writing next week emails because they're already sat in your draft folder by Friday lunch. If you're just talking about a specific benefit of your product, this might be like an AI tool or a copywriter that can help you, save time writing ads, blah, blah, blah. This is one way you can say it. This is another way, but this one actually registers and also attracts a better type of person through specificity. And one of them will get scroll past. Like, I scroll past so many just AI slop ads nowadays. But these ones, like, if I get an ad that actually resonates with me and my pain point, then I might click. Every single claim you make in an ad has to feel like it was written about their specific situation. And by they, I mean your ICP. And so I have a full SOP on this, but this is really, really important to understand. And really, you just need to improve as a copywriter. If your ads aren't doing well and you're following all of the other best practices, you need to improve as a copywriter. Now, when it comes to campaign structure and launching and scaling, I really think that clicking the buttons in the ads manager is by far the easy part when it comes to running ads. Like, all of this is way more important, but there is things that we have learned and we have been implementing recently for clients that have improved our results drastically. But just remember, like, the caveat to all of this is that no media buying strategy is going to outperform having 10 out of 10 creatives with very good messaging. So let's go over some of the basic strategies and basic understanding of how Ads Manager works, starting with understanding conversions and events. So like I said earlier, Meta has 52,000 dynamically updating data points on each user on its platforms, and they are very good at finding people who are going to perform, let's say, the outcome you're optimizing for. And so we show Meta which action we want people to take through either standard events or Conversions API, which are custom events sent back to the server, normally with high levels of attribution, but can still send standard events back to the server. You don't really need to, it's very easy to find. Get more information from Claude. I'm not going to spend too much time going over standard events and CAPI and all of that. But some examples of standard events you might use, you might want to be optimizing for is, I want leads. I want schedules or bookings. I want purchases, which is kind of like the end event. And Meta, based on the millions of advertisers that they have, all using these events, kind of know which users on their platform are more likely to take the events you're optimizing for. And so you want to optimize for the furthest event possible down your funnel. So realistically, everyone wants to optimize for a purchase, for a high ticket purchase. However, if I'm running a webinar funnel and I'm optimizing my campaign around purchases, I might launch my campaign 5 days out before a webinar, and then someone will book a call 2 days after the webinar. And it will be a week from when I launch my campaign and someone opts in for that data to be fed back to Meta. So you can't really optimize that because they're not going to get any data. Whereas if initially I'm optimizing for lead, then instantly Meta is getting feedback as soon as someone registers and signs up for my webinar if I'm putting a lead event on that page, which is way better for getting lower costs. And I assure you, if you run a webinar campaign optimized around purchase at the first time, like Meta is just going to get no data. So it's just going to go filtering around through different buckets of people trying to find someone who's going to get a conversion, but they never will. So that is really important to understand. You always want to try and optimize to the furthest event possible down the funnel, but oftentimes you won't be able to do that when you're launching. You won't be able to optimize for a scheduled or a purchase on a webinar funnel release. So you would optimize earlier down the funnel until you're getting enough data and enough consistency to then optimize further down the funnel. Or you can use a cyclical campaign where you are still sending purchased and scheduled data back to the pixel, but you're still optimizing your campaign around the lead event. Now, pixel. What is a pixel? So a pixel is basically a giant data set on an account, right? A pixel is basically a data set, and you can deliberately hold back or give more information to your pixel to find more of those people or less of those people. Now, there are two examples that I'm going to give you on how to condition your pixel effectively, one for a webinar and one for a VSL. So on a VSL application funnel, you will have a Typeform, and what we do is based on the budget. So this Typeform question has a budget of like 0 to 2K, in which you cannot book a call if you have less. So you can't book 2K to 4K. So let's just do 2 to 4. They can book a call. And then I think we have like 4 to 6K. They can book a call. And then we have 6K plus. Cool. They can book a call. Now, this is great. But as you can see here in our Typeform logic, if someone on the Calendly step has said they have 2 to 4K, they can still book, but they will be sent to a no pixel post booking page, whereas these people here will be sent to a pixel post booking page. And what that does is in our ads manager results column, it means that our cost will be like super inflated. This is like $700 cost per call when it's more like 200. However, we are telling Facebook that the only thing that is qualified for us, that is good, that is hitting our pixel, that is sending data back to Meta, are people who say they have more than $4,000 to invest. And you can even take this a step further by having a toggle inside of your CRM where you only send data back to leads once the setter has triaged the lead and qualified them and pinged them as qualified. Of course, then you are kind of withholding more data from Facebook. The feedback cycle is slower. But if you're really struggling with lead quality and your costs are quite cheap, that might be something you can consider. On a webinar funnel, on the other hand, by the way, if you're watching this before June 16th, I'm hosting a webinar. You can see it here on how to start growth operating, how you can scale as a growth operator, how to hit 70K a month, like I've hit with my operating agency. So you can sign up for that. I will be pitching at the end, but I promise you my offer is very good and you're going to get a ton of value either way. But for a webinar, let's say after someone signs up, I can actually have a little checkbox here on my sign up form, which says, I have X money to invest in starting. You know, let's say you're struggling really with getting financially qualified leads and you've got like an investment type offer, like a how to start a property business and they need a lot of money. I have more than X money to start. And it's a little checkbox. You can send all of these people that tick the checkbox as lead to one post booking page with a lead conversion event. And anyone who doesn't check on it gets sent to the exact same conversion page just without that lead event. And what that does is it signals to Facebook, okay, I want more people who say they have this amount of money. And what this is going to do is obviously find you more of those people, but be aware it will inflate your costs because you're sending less results back and Facebook is finding more difficulty in terms of just optimizing for the conversion, which is obviously going to lower your cost per lead. So these are all things that you can do. This one's called like a brokey bait, where you're baiting people to not click and not get sent back to your pixel to avoid broke people. Kind of the same thing you're doing here. If you're struggling with getting the right people on calls, this can be really, really useful. Now, when it comes to campaign structure, I'm going to cover this very briefly as this video is already getting quite long, but you have kind of two options. You have campaign budget optimization and ad set budget optimization. So for CBO, you're basically giving Meta control on which ads to spend on based on all of the ads in a campaign and all of the ad sets. And this is useful when you don't have any winning angles and you want to let Meta decide what it thinks is best. You just want to say, Meta, I'm giving you the control. With ABO though, you get more control. You direct ad spend at the ad set level. And this really we like to use when we have winning ads already and we have winning messaging and we want to be much more in control with where we direct our spend. For example, you might run a CBO, and we had this recently where you have one ad and it's just getting a ton of spend, but it is so bad. But your costs are really good, but like the leads, the return on ad spend is just like, it's not working. And we had a situation like this, and we had like 20 other ads in the ad set that weren't getting spent. And this is like what is happening now with Meta. We had 20 other ads, and we just cut this ad. We paused, and we were like, okay, this ad is clearly not a winner. Let's just cut it. And then we had like 2 of the ads out of these 20 just started absolutely ripping, and they weren't getting any spend before, but because we took some level of control, even in a CBO structure, we became very, very profitable. And ad set, like ABO, just allows you to separate more and have even more control. And remember, no matter what, this is one of the biggest things that we have done recently that we were struggling with before, is that when you're launching ad campaigns, make sure, like just a lesson here is, the targeting of the ad is obviously done through the messaging, but it is done at the ad set level. So if you're mixing up different personas or really different messaging or different ideas inside of an ad set, the algorithm, Andromeda, is going to get so confused because it's like, it's trying to find the right type of person that you're targeting with your ads, but you have so much different messaging and it's showing these ads to different people, and it's like just getting confused. So always, even if you're running a CBO, whether you're running ABO and you're controlling more, always group your ads by idea or by persona at the ad set level, even if you're running a CBO structure, because if not, you will get royally clarted by the algorithm. So that's a bit of leaving wisdom that I'm going to leave you with. Now, if you want our agency, my agency, to come in and run your ads done for you, you're a coach, there's a link for you in the description. As you can see, we've gotten some pretty cool results for clients recently. There's some more case studies on this channel, on my Instagram. And if you're an operator who's like, holy shit, I need to learn ads. And by the way, you do need to learn ads if you're an operator. I'm sorry, organic is not cutting anymore. You will not survive in a few years' time just trying to scale craze organically and always being on the hamster wheel of having to sign new clients. So if you want to learn ads and also you want to learn how to acquire clients and how I've scaled to 7K a month, either register for my webinar, link in the description if it's there, if you're watching this as this video has come out, or there should be a link with a VSL video, or just send me a DM on Instagram and I'll be happy to get back to you. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video, and any questions, shoot me a DM. And yeah, thanks for watching.